Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. You have arrived at our chat with the Free Black Thought President, Dr. Erec Smith. Hopefully you had an opportunity to get hydrated, grab a refreshment, and get settled in here. I just want to go over some of our Zoom housekeeping as we get ready to begin this event. First, we invite you to use chat. All of your chats will be seen by the host and co-host. And also we invite you to make this an interactive experience as well by using your Zoom reactions. It may be located in a different place on your computer. And if it is, that's fine too. Just search for reactions. And if you'd like to contribute using your voice, and I see you, Raymond, thank you so much. You would raise your hand. Once you click raise hand and you've been acknowledged as a speaker, you'll see a message pop up on your screen that says the host would like you to unmute, and that will give you the ability to contribute using your voice. So many ways to contribute, all valid. You can use the chat, you can raise a hand, and you can also use your Zoom reactions throughout this chat. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share and turn the floor over to our president of Free Black Thought, Dr. Erec Smith.
Thank you very much, Lee. And thank you all for coming. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time, and it's been a long time coming. But I want to start with this meeting and do something once a month comparable to this. And perhaps on those meetings, we'll have some other people from the Free Black Thought team or some other guests who are interested in the mission of Free Black Thought and things like that. So welcome to the first of hopefully many chats with me and or others. I'm coming to you today, not just as Erec Smith, that's what I typically do. I'm here as president of Free Black Thought. And what that means is I'm not a top-down authoritarian by any means. We are a pretty lateral structured team. However, I like the thought that I am here as the outward-looking face of the situation, and I'm here to, as president, answer any questions, listen to any concerns or any kinds of thoughts regarding Free Black Thought and our mission. So, what is our mission? We want to showcase and promote viewpoint diversity within Black America. I don't even like saying, Black community or anything like that. That's too essentialized, as far as I'm concerned, and my and people on the team agree. So we're here to do that, and we are a 501c3 charged with educating or instructing individuals and society in ways that we think are beneficial to individuals and society. And we think that exposing or showcasing viewpoint diversity within Black America, be they academics, educators, writers, artists, politicians, things like that, I think that is a benefit to society for a couple of reasons. One is true, right? The idea that we are a monolith is egregiously false and always has been. So there's that. And also, the idea of viewpoint diversity within Black America has a lot of implications for what we're calling diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, right? A lot of these initiatives, as many of you probably already know, are based on the assumption that all people of color, especially Black people, interpret the world the same way. There is a stimulus, and we all respond to that stimulus the same way. Nothing could be farther from the truth. So, when entertaining diversity of thought in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative workshops, there's talks and things like that, and it's a different creature. You're looking at individuals now and not groups, and that in itself can change the structure, the tone, and the attitude and values and beliefs of a workshop of that sort. So those are the two main reasons we see are necessary impetus for creating Free Black Thought. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to make this idea quite popular. I'll say a little bit more, and then I'll shut up and have people ask their questions in the chat. I am very happy that the word free in Free Black Thought could be an adjective and a verb, right? The Black Thought is free, right? It's not confined. We're not compelled to think a particular thing or anything like that. Free speech, free thought, free voices, all those things. But we also want to free Black thought in that we want to, break other Black Americans, Black people in the entire diaspora out of this, monolithic expectation, right? People expect us to agree, they expect us to be best friends with the other Black person in the room, although you've never seen them before, right? These kind of things are, I know this is dramatic, but they imprison the mind to a large degree, and we want to free people from that. So those are the two ways that we think about free and Free Black Thought. They're both accurate, and feel free to emphasize one or the other or both equally. That's fine. Okay, now the main part, the part I've been looking forward to, your questions. So let's see what we have here. Hold on 1 second. So do we have any questions? Okay, this makes it seem like you guys just want me to talk. Oh, Joe. We would like you to, do you want to unmute people, Lee, or are we putting things in the chat?
Yes, so first up is Joe. He's been sent an invitation to unmute.
Yeah, I've been working on another article for Minding the Campus, and I'm pitching it towards the upcoming Supreme Court cases dealing with students for fair admissions and against Harvard and University of North Carolina about diversity as the last hook upon which to draw an exception to racial equality in the 14th Amendment. And so the question is, on the arc of American history, with its ups and downs, aiming towards some kind of, in my mind, exceptionalism, and if we're going to optimize that 14th Amendment, even with all the hurdles we've gone over, and we realize that there are disparities in the world. So the question is, under the law, perhaps it has to deal with individuals. That doesn't take away from disparities, but how do we fix society? Do we fix society by putting our finger on the scales of government action, or those that are funded by government with government funds at, say, the universities? Or is the fix to society someplace else? Like for me, in terms of education, it would be at K through 12 schools that are failing tremendously, and rather than trying to fix society at the university level. So anyway, I'm struggling with that kind of issue. And in terms of, if I were going to write the opinion for the Supreme Court, that's my fantasy, how would I write that opinion? Trying to anticipate some of those arguments, but kind of looking for that North Star for America. So anyway, I don't know if there's a question in there, but maybe you can point me in the right direction towards that North Star.
Well, I'll try. That's a tall order. How do you fix society? Well, okay. And I've been thinking about this as well. And I keep telling myself we have to make classical liberal values cooling it, right? It's not enough to say, we believe in reason, the privacy of reason, equality. It's not enough to talk about other aspects of whiteness like being on time and appreciating the scientific method and things like that. It's not enough to say we should do that. We have to show why we should do that. And we have to show in very clear and explicit ways, why this is good, how it can benefit everybody involved, not just certain groups, certain other kind of demographics. Why is this so great in the first place? We got to stop saying, hey, this is great, no explanation, and start being clear about why it's great, right? And I have my thoughts on, for example, free speech and why that's great, and equality and diversity, especially viewpoint diversity, and why that's great, and why the concept of a participatory and deliberative democracy is great. I have those reasons. I have to translate them from academia to something that normal people will read and use, but they're there. And I think that's one of the things that perhaps Free Black Thought should work on, showing people, right? Not just telling people.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I'm going to elevate from the chat before going on to our next raised hand that we see so that our chatters don't get lost. This is a question from Will Fullwood, who says, you said there is a stimulus and we all respond to the stimulus in the same way as a description of what DEI promotes. As someone who works with multiple DEI councils and has conversations on race consistently, I have never encountered such a sentiment. How did you come to the conclusion that there was a monolithic expectation regarding conceptualizing race? One I've never encountered. That's a question from Will Fullwood.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, congratulations for not encountering that. That's wonderful. Secondly, I don't mean to say that I've been a fly on the wall or a part of every diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. I have, however, seen, with my own eyes and heard with my own ears, people who do have the sentiment that, there's a normal way of being Black and then everything else is mistaken, right? Inauthentic in some kind of way. Now, I'm talking mostly about higher education. So I'll say that right there. And I only have anecdotal reports about corporate America and how that goes. And I trust those reports, right? I have no real reason not to. So that's where I'm seeing these things. And it manifests typically as here is the Black experience, and anybody else is either Black adjacent, right? Whether they're actually Black or not, right? Or they're just duped, they're tricked, they're lost, some people like to say. So I am happy you haven't seen much of that or none of that. That's fantastic. I've seen tons of it. So I don't want to fall back on lived experience. That's something that I think is a bit hackneyed these days as well. But through my experience and my research, I can say with the utmost certainty and confidence that this is a problem.
All right, and then up next, I see a raised hand from David Allerhand. So let's ask David to unmute.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I just completed a master's degree. So I'm in that process of looking for a job that is a job in itself. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts on how someone, I'm not going to go into a job like pessimistic, but I'm going to have to go through some DEI trainings. And, I kind of wear my Judaism with my heart. And, there is some overlap with anti-Semitism and DEI training. So how can I not basically tell HR like, screw you, but like, I want to go into this job with like an open mind. However, a lot of these people are closed-minded. When I was in undergrad, thankfully I didn't have as much in my master's. I did face a lot of issues with these kinds of trainings or with these kinds of interactions with classmates, where I happen to be more on the center right, but a full-on classical liberal John Stuart Mill lover and all of that. So what are your suggestions on like how the workforce is changing and how a 28-year-old can go into this and not basically have a target on his back like I did in undergrad?
Well, as you already know, but I think it's important to say, this is not easy. It's not going to be easy. So I don't want to pretend I have the magic bullet that'll help you out with all of this. But when I hear things like that, when I hear the fact that people have to write diversity statements that, basically are only open to one particular viewpoint, right? When they have to go through workshops like this, heavily based on some of the critical social justice tenets that people like D'Angelo put forth in the world. When I hear those things, I think, well, that's precisely why Free Black Thought is here. It's supposed to be a place that says, hey, wait a minute, we're looking at things too narrowly. We have to widen our view and see that there are other ways of doing this kind of work, right? So what we want to do is provide that through the Journal of Free Black Thought, through the Compendium, which is a long list of unorthodox, quote unquote, authors of African descent, and saying things that you don't typically get in mainstream media, right? And we're not saying you need to agree with particular authors or things like that. We're saying, hey, these particular authors are out there, acknowledge them. If you do acknowledge them, then that is also a tacit acknowledgement that, there are different ways to look at anti-racism. There are different strategies to get to that same goal of racial equality. So, I would say, hey, look at Free Black Thought, or I would, try to find funds to get me to come to your institution and talk or something and be a pain in the butt that way. But there are also alternatives to diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings. Theory of Enchantment is out there. Empowered Pathways is out there. I'm actually involved with that, as is somebody else from Free Black Thought. So there are, and I can, we can put that stuff in the chat later on for people. But there are alternatives, right? So I would point in certain directions. I would point towards Free Black Thought. I would point towards some of the alternative diversity trainings that I just mentioned. There are more out there still, right? And I would emphasize that people of color, specifically Black people in this situation, are behind these alternatives. Right? They truly believe in them and have well thought out reasons for why. That's the only advice I can give you regarding that. The elephant in the room is the fact that you may have to play the game for a little bit. And that's unfortunate, and it's sad to me to say that out loud, but that's the reality.
All right, thank you, Dr. Smith. Elevating from the chat before we go on to our next digital hand raise. This is from Raymond Nelson. Raymond says, how is the business that is Free Black Thought doing in what I think it is its first year or so?
Yeah, it's been almost 2 years, actually. And how's it going as a business? Well, we've been focusing a lot on the Journal, mainly, and partnering with other people, securing grants. The Institute for Humane Studies has given us a generous grant that we are trying to use to improve some things that we're doing right now. That's all I'll say about that. I don't want to A, spoil things, and B, say things before they solidify. But we are getting the donations in that way. The subscription for the Journal keeps growing and growing with every week. And what we want to do is, be able to go out there, create events, whether they're panel discussions, whether they're symposia or something like that, whether it's just one of us speaking about Free Black Thought and its principles and its mission. We right now we want to, get out into the world. I think that's our next step, and we hope to be doing that soon.
Okay, and our next question is coming from Dylan. Let's ask Dylan to unmute.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So I know psychology is not your field, but I'm curious if you saw or had any thoughts about this controversy with the Society of Personality and Social Psychology. John Haidt publicly resigned, and it was in response to the requirement for an anti-racism statement on conference submissions. I'm also in SPSP. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or recommendations on that.
I think what is happening in the field of psychology, behavioral, sciences and things like that, is probably the most egregious manifestation of wokeness in an institution. Why? Because, well, I'll relay stories that other people in this field have told me. Somebody can come. This is an actual thing that happened. Somebody can come and say they have issues with affirmative action, right? And they don't, they didn't get a job. They're upset about that. They're trying to work out their feelings and things like that. And they say that they're upset about affirmative action. The therapist is trained to stop things and say, you can't be against affirmative action, as opposed to helping this person get to a better place mentally and emotionally, right? So in a sense, you're kind of making the issue worse in the name of social justice. There's no need for that. That person is there for your help. You're not there to push a political agenda or anything, no matter what you believe, right? I even had, I'll tell a story. When I was a tutor in the Writing Center in graduate school, I had a student come to me, and I was also a student. I was a graduate student, obviously, and his thesis for his 2-page paper was Black people are ruining America, right? So somehow he didn't know I was Black, I guess, or he did know and was that brazen. And I thought to myself, okay, I could totally rip this guy a new one and tell him how crazy what he said or thinks or writes is, but that would shut things down. He'd probably leave. Nothing productive may happen. Or I can talk to this guy. I can point out the logical fallacies in his reasoning, why they're logical fallacies, how he can improve them, and things like that, and have a conversation about how misguided that statement really is, his thesis really was, right? So I chose the latter. I chose to keep talking to him and point out those fallacies and make him find a better and accurate argument, right? That isn't as racist as his original one. And I don't regret that decision at all. I think what's missing in society, be it the corporate America or psychology or something like that, is the ability to sit there with a very uncomfortable viewpoint being presented to you and maintain the conversation. We're having a hard time doing it. As a rhetorician, I am especially passionate about that situation, but it is a general situation that's affecting all of us. So that's a long-winded answer to your question. I agree with Jonathan Haidt, and I'm glad he did what he did.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Up next, we have a raised hand from Ildi, sending an invite to ask to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, hi, nice to meet you. So my question relates more to this, to the issue of alternatives and how to offer or create alternatives in the field of inclusion and diversity and all that. And just so that the question will be clear where I'm coming from, I'm a photographer, so I have a documentary background and I have an artist background, but I also teach Africana studies. So I also have a background in Africana studies. In fact, I'm an adjunct at SUNY Stony Brook this semester. I don't know how long that's going to happen because I am teaching articles from Free Black Thought. So this is sort of like a test semester to see how, how the students react and what kind of conversations we can have around those issues. But the point that I want to raise is coming out of Africana studies, I actually really believe in the value, beyond classical liberal values and all that. I really believe in a lot of the values that Africana studies embodies, right? So comparative perspectives, the importance of art in our knowledge, the role of art in our knowledge, an interdisciplinary approach, and all of that. What I see as a basic problem in the field is a lot more like a lack of, it sort of connects to how you were describing this monolithic idea of the Black experience, and also a lack of mutuality in when we say, well, we have to learn about certain histories, but that really means we only have to learn about one specific history, and of course in one specific way, right? So I guess my goal would be is to create, like, not just point out that there is a problem with that, but really to create especially art-based material that represents like a meaningful inclusion, right? Like, let's say bringing together two different parts of the world, or two different skin colors, races, if you want to put it that way, ethnicities that typically are not brought together. And the question comes after that, like, so how interested would Free Black Thought in collaborating with that or supporting that? Is this something that's, you know, that's on the list, like is a goal for you to do that, like produce that kind of material?
Well, it sounds like, if I'm understanding you correctly, you are also promoting a diversity of viewpoints, you know, to a very large degree, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right, well, that is our primary mission. So, you know, I can safely say that we're open to a conversation about any kind of collaboration. And then, like I said earlier, we're trying to get out there. You know, I want to be able to visit campuses. I want us to go to, you know, not just colleges, but maybe high schools, things like that. Create a panel, talk to the students, talk to the teachers. That's what I want to do. So what you're asking is exactly what one of our more immediate goals is. So long story short, I am open to that, and I think you should contact me after this, and we can have a conversation. I'll put all my information in the chat towards the end of the hour.
Okay, great, thank you.
Did I answer anything? Because
yes, no, absolutely, yes,
okay.
You did.
Thank you.
Okay, and we are at almost at the halfway point of this meeting. Just want to give everyone a heads up on that time. And next up is a question from our chat. Then we'll go back to our digital raised hands. It's from Otha Cole. Otha says, orthodox thinking rewards Black Americans, at least in the short term, more so than other groups. I worry diverse thought amongst Black Americans will diminish as the incentive to support prevailing thought spreads to more parts of the economy. What, if anything, can disrupt the practical inclination to adopt beliefs that reward you materially over beliefs that reward morally or spiritually?
I think a diversity of viewpoints can be materially rewarding as well. I mean, it's all about how you present it. Like I said earlier, we have to make certain values cool again, or cool in the first place to a lot of people. And, you know, what I meant by that was that we have to present ourselves effectively in the marketplace of ideas. You know, we have to show people why this is the best way to go, how it can benefit us, you know, what it can look like, right? And then, you know, I mean, part of me is a little taken back with you know, presenting this in capitalist terms and things like that, which I think is part of the issue that you're bringing up. But you know, viewpoint diversity can be conceptualized as a product of sorts. You know, this is something that if you embraced in your institution, you know, things would be better. You know, whether it's on an individual standpoint or a corporate standpoint, this can benefit you, right? And I don't think we're doing that well enough. When I say we, I say, you know, not just Free Black Thought, not just academics, but in general. We're not doing that well enough. We're not selling viewpoint diversity well enough. And that sounds so weird saying, but basically that's what I mean. So it doesn't have to be diversity. Monolithic diversity is the sexy new product, and we're not. We can get sexy too. And that line taken out of context is probably going to haunt me in the future, but I said it there, it's done.
All right, thank you, Dr. Smith. Up next, we have a digital hand raise from Stephen Lawrence, sending an invite to unmute.
Okay. Can you all hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Hi, Eric. Nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see and meet you finally.
Yes. I have been very influenced by Free Black's thought, and necessarily so. I teach at what's called, and the federal government calls it, a minority serving institution, MSI. We serve 74% students of color. I teach I teach in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I teach all the developmental reading and writing courses, which it's notable that sometimes 100% of my students are students of color, and a super majority of them are in fact African Americans from the Boston public school system, where I taught for 15 years. So this is a very rich context for me, and I successfully argued in the spring of 2021 for us to find new ways to bring in diversity and inclusion. And the reasoning that I gave, I'll share one reasoning. I gave several, but one of them was we are an MSI, and we're not a wealthy college. We're not Harvard. It's the Benjamin Franklin Cummings Institute of Technology, and we're not wealthy, right? And our students are often students that, to use typical phrases that are known in our profession: food insecurity, transportation insecurity, the difficulty and the stress of being a person of color during a time of what they call racial reckoning, especially in the summer of 2020. So there are a lot of stressors that are real. And so I find myself, obviously to the left of things in the way I see it. And so I mentioned all this to you because this is, I am sending an email out tonight because I'm the chair of the Faculty Development Committee. And what I did was I made sure the Dean of Academic Affairs okayed it. And, I basically made sure that whatever I send out, it was thoroughly, processed. So we're not having DEI trainings where we postponed the trainings for a year while we had candid conversations about how best to do this. The main argument I made was, we need each other. We need each other to collaborate when we're on an institution that almost closed. And so to the extent that we can trust one another and not be automatically trained to be suspicious of one another's motives, which sometimes are brought into these trainings, microaggressions theory can be taken to an extreme. So we found a way. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're calling the training Conversations about Inclusion, and we have late 30s African American gentleman named Kurt Foston is going to lead that, but we're rolling it in to trauma informed environments as well. So we're not using the word DEI, we're not using the word training, we're calling it conversation, and we're going to seek to make it symmetrical, and we'll see how it goes. So my question is, I wanted to give you that context first. My question is, where does the word equity fit in for you, Eric? Because I have people on both sides. I can't abandon it entirely. And I use the term responsible equity, but when I do, I get torn apart by people to my right. But I see it overused in an extreme way. So where do you see equity fitting in all this? How do you see equity?
Well, I don't see it as everybody has to be exactly the same. I see it as everybody has to have the same or similar opportunities, right? You gotta help people get to starting line. Perhaps you can't help them run. You can have a Gatorade on the way or something like that they can get and drink or something like that. I'm trying to extend this metaphor, but you gotta let them get to the starting line. Right? And you got to let them get to the starting line in condition that is conducive to a race. That to me is what we need to be doing right now. Everything else is up to the students, the educators, the resources they may have or should have anyway. But that's what I want to see. Often, well, I mean, I guess I need to ask you a couple of questions before I continue.
Sure.
When you talk about inclusion, does that include equity and diversity and all those things? Are you talking about all of that?
Yeah, so that's interesting. We you mean in the upcoming conversation we're gonna have it?
Yes.
You mean that workshop? So we're not gonna we chose the dean of academic affairs and I and Kurt, the person who's going to be running it. We thoroughly processed throughout the summer. We're gonna because these sometimes the words diversity, equity, inclusion, it can cause a cringing response in people. They come in with the defensiveness already, and so we want to use rhetoric. Thank you, Eric, for that. We want to use rhetoric in a thoughtful way, and we're calling them conversations. And this guy Kurt's a pretty good facilitator. And what we want is students. Well, students won't be at this one, but we want all faculty members and staff members to feel that they can speak truthfully. And some of them might indeed say. They might speak from the perspective of critical social justice theory, and that's okay too, but it's not going to be imposed on all of us. And the phrase I use over and over again is viewpoint diversity. And they even okay the resources, which by the way includes that one that you wrote recently, Eric, about unsettling truths about DEI. That's actually on our resource list. In addition to, say again?
That wasn't me specifically.
It was free Black thought.
Yes.
But alongside critical social justice type stuff as well. So we are not we're trying not to impose anything, but to be somewhat balanced. And so we'll see. I don't know how well it's going to go and how long it'll last, but
okay,
that's
all right.
Okay.
I was just wondering because there are a lot of people who have equity in mind, but they go about it in misguided ways. I think it's not the best thing in the world to get rid of AP classes, to get rid of academic awards, to get rid of valedictorians and things like that. That is the bizarro equity.
Yes, that's what I call irresponsible equity. We're having conversations about eliminating placement tests, and I'm pushing back a little bit on that. So there's some of that. Hiring practices are certainly looking for, faculty of color. That is a big part of the equity statement. And it seems to be okay for now. It's working. But I feel that we rolled back a little bit. It was kind of over the top a little bit for a while, understandably. Did
anybody else lose Steve?
Looks like
summer of 2020 after George Floyd. Oh, you don't see me?
No. We see you. We didn't hear you for about 10 seconds.
We're finding our way towards a more moderate approach. That's integrative, and that's the word that we're using too. So far in the summer of 2020, it was very, very similar to the DEI statements and DEI approaches across the country that was exploding, and there was, a lot of language of racial reckoning, and it was sort of like, we got to turn the heat down here because we are barely open for business. We almost closed, as was happened to a lot of small colleges. But we need each other, and we got to calm down a little bit and turn down the heat so we can get our business together. I think we're doing it. We'll see how it goes.
All right, thank you, Steve Lors, and very nice to meet you. I think FBT should probably have a contest. Who can come up with the best alternative phrase to DEI?
That'd be
diversity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. People are like, oh no, they tighten up. You start to get defensive before the meeting happens, right? So I wonder if we can do something like that. That would be fun.
That'd be great.
But anyway, let's move on. I think we have 3 more people who have raised hands.
Yes, Dr. Smith, and just pointing out for Stephen and others, there's a couple resources dropped in the chat that may be helpful in sharing with folks, especially the Ian Rowe book excerpt, which unpacks that famous equity versus equality meme, as well as our article on 6 unsettling features. The next question is coming from the chat, because we've been doing a lot of the digital hands, and I want to honor the folks that are participating in chat as well. This is coming from Yi. And the question is, are you able to reach out to college students to help them see our side of concerns?
Am I able to? I'm trying. I just came from a class where the students are doing a problem-based learning assignment, and it has to do with how do we, like I was saying earlier, how do we get the free Black thought out there more to more people who don't know about it, like college students or something like that. So I'm having college students know about Free Black Thought so that other college students can know about Free Black Thought. So it's very meta pedagogical on my end of things. But other than that, I just do my best to be out there as much as possible. Articles, podcasts, talks that are recorded. That's the best I can do right now. And doing my best to distribute those things as far and as widely as possible. That's the only real answer I have for that right now. Hopefully, I can have something a little more robust, but that's where I am.
All right, thank you, Dr. Smith. I'm going to try to keep it moving here as we head into almost the last 15, 18 minutes or so. The next question is from Worthy Springer, who has a raised hand here online, inviting Worthy to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much for doing this. I got a few questions, like two, and I'll be brief. First, to provide some context, so I'm blind, and so the way that I engage race is just far different than the way I guess the sighted world does. And I'm wondering, it seems to me that the color blindness approach is just, to me, just the best way we in a 21st century multicultural democracy can make things work. I'm wondering, like because when I have conversations about this with people, they just think that my experience isn't transferable. Maybe not completely, but I'm wondering what can we do? Like how can we on the colorblind position better articulated so it does become in vogue again? Because I do fear, because I don't think the race consciousness angle is the best way to go about it, especially like for Black Americans like myself. And also, my next question is I think the DEI people have the way they view culture, I think is, I just completely disagree with it because I think they view culture as totally vertical, as in it's something that's passed from father to son, mother to daughter. But the culture that's horizontal, I don't think they understand how to reckon with that. So this is what I mean. For example, like I'm a big language nerd. Like I'm studying a ton of languages right now, like Dutch, Italian, Spanish, French. And it's like, even though you could say those cultures aren't all entirely Black, these are cultures that I would consider to be mine now, right? And you can do this with any person. But it's something that I think is really hard to, this is something that many of the people on the other side just do not accept. And they either view it as a type of cultural theft, or they view it, or they think that if you're going to, the only way to get people of minority, like who are minorities into things, like, I don't know, classical music or stuff like that, is to have a minority do it, which I just don't believe that's the case. Like classical music didn't become big in the Asian community because a bunch of, like, it became more Chinese in the 80s and 90s. And I just don't think that, that approach is really the best way. And likewise, like the NBA is watched by a ton of Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans, and there aren't that many of them in there, but it's still beloved by them. And so, again, I'm sorry for going a little bit long. So I just want to know what you think of those two things.
Well, I'll try to, remember everything you just said there, but I know in general you're talking about, the concept of colorblindness and the concept of cultural appropriation, if I'm not mistaken. It sounds like that's what you're touching on. Regarding colorblindness, I mean, that is one of the biggest straw man fallacies that I'm hearing these days. Nobody is saying that they literally don't see color. All right.
I mean, I can.
People know that I'm Black, and they know there may be some things that come with that. But the key idea is maybe, right? You can't be sure what that represents to me. Colorblindness just means whether I like you or not, it has nothing to do with your skin color. That's all it means. That's all it's ever meant. Having this idea that people actually take it literally is not just a straw man fallacy, but a wildly immature one. They got to do better than that. So I strongly believe in colorblindness in its traditional sense, right? And I push colorblindness in its traditional sense. And if you think that somebody's skin color has to do with the way they see the world or things like that, or it should be considered, let them tell you that. right? Another, corollary to what you're talking about here is the idea of agency as well. I'll tell you if I need help based on my Black experience and things like that. Until then, just treat me like you would treat anybody else here. All right, that's how I feel about it. But I'll stop rambling with that and go to cultural appropriation. That's a tricky one for this reason. If people are appropriating something to mock it, right? If they're appropriating something ironically, I don't like that. I think that's an issue. And I think people like that are getting conflated with people who have a sincere interest in aspects of another culture, right? And really want to get into it and see the beauty of it, see the efficacy of it. And, don't want to take it from that culture, but they want to, use it with that culture. I think we're conflating those two dispositions. We're putting them all in the same pot, and I don't think we should do that. Regarding the first pot, the people that are doing it to make fun of a culture, there's also another toxic way of looking at cultural appropriation. Like, this is mine, period, because of my skin color. I know several, and by several I mean three. Three white people who sincerely think my command of the English language is a form of cultural appropriation. I'm supposed to be speaking Black English. I know adults who feel that way. All right, so that's also stupid, right? And we have to separate people like that and the people making fun of cultures from the people with a sincere interest, right? And what's more, this cultural appropriation thing, this sincere interest, can in and of itself open up dialogue across differences, right? Let's talk about this event your culture has. Let's talk about this garb that your culture wears on a certain time, right? Let's have these conversations, right? It's an opportunity. It's a prompt for discussion. So there are so many good things about it, but all we can think about are the more toxic ideas that I talked about just now. So that's my long-winded answer to your long-winded question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. Up next, we have, I'm going to take one from the chat, and then we'll go to our digital hand raise. This one's from Chris Rhodes. It says, do you have any thoughts about the current trend towards requiring mandatory diversity statements in order to obtain a job in academia? How would you advise a recent PhD in the position of having to write such a statement to approach the task?
I think diversity statements are fine as long as you're allowed to have your own statement, right? They're fine as long as viewpoint diversity is allowed. When people require diversity statements, they seem to be looking for one particular viewpoint. There's one right answer. They know it. They have to see if you know. If you write something, I was talking to people the other day about this, and I was like, if Frederick Douglass wrote a diversity statement today, it would get rejected. And I firmly believe that. Right? There are different ways or different ideas, different strategies, well thought out strategies with some heft behind them for achieving diversity, equity, and inclusion that are not aligned with critical social justice, that are not aligned with applied CRT or something like that. They are more traditional or maybe even more innovative themselves. So I like the idea of diversity statements as long as you can have your statement and you don't have to mimic the statement you think they want to hear. Unfortunately, I can say that, but the reality is there's one kind of right way to do that, and you better know it. So, you're talking to somebody who's not on the job market and hasn't been for a while, so I don't have to deal with this. But if the diversity statement is in order, then maybe Free Black Thought should make a kind of like a boilerplate situation, and you can just plug things in, right? Like a kind of Mad Libs of diversity statements. I don't know. I'll talk to the crew about that. But long story short, again, You're in a tough position. People on the job market right now are in a tough position. They got to do what they got to do to get their feet in the door. And I suggest you do what you have to do to get your feet in the door. And organizations like Free Black Thought and comparable, 501c3s and things like that will do as much as they can to fix the situation.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Up next, we have a raised hand from digital participant Alka. I'm asking to unmute.
Hello, hi. Greetings from Britain. I've not got my photo on because I'm recovering, but I'm not a pretty sight at the moment, but it's good to meet you. We Don't Divide Us, and we're doing, focusing on schools particularly in terms of helping parents and teachers who are coming to us frequently. I think we're way behind America in Britain, but I think we might be catching up pretty quickly on how far this, I don't know what to call it really. I mean, I suppose successor ideology comes pretty close, or certainly this very anti-liberal, anti-humanist set of beliefs that seems to be permeating all our institutions. Just wanted to say the thing on following your last reply, Eric, was that in Britain, it's all the official funding bodies for research now have a mandatory EDI statement for every applicant that wants to apply for any grants. So right from the start, it's kind of distorting the way researchers are encouraged to think about their own research, really. So that seems to me very worrying in terms of what academia is supposed to be about in terms of pursuing truthful knowledge. It can't be truthful if you don't have an open-ended question at the beginning, if you're kind of foregoing your conclusions. But the question I wanted to ask you really was whether Free Black Thought has any connections or plans to have any connections with any of the parents groups in America, because we hear quite a lot of very many different groups. It seems to me that you're lucky in one way in that this is much more overtly political, whereas in Britain, a lot of people still don't see this as political. They kind of see it as, a few individuals who might have gone a bit overboard, but they can't really see the underlying direction that this ideology is going in. So just your thoughts on that, really. Thank you.
You're very welcome. We've been trying our best to get into or figure out how we can contribute to the K through 12 struggle for some time now. And we think the compendium at Free Black Thought, the website anyway, has some potential for being, revised into a kind of curriculum that speaks to these issues. I have, and one colleague of mine have spoken to Parents United, that organization that's comparable to Don't Divide Us, it sounds like. I've spoken at events for the Californians for education reform, who also sound comparable to what you're doing. So again, we're making connections, but we don't have a kind of solid footing just yet when it comes to the K through 12 and the parent situation. We've kind of been doing that individually, but we see that compendium as a potentially powerful way of having parents, even teachers, point to and say, "Hey, look at this. Right? We can use this in some way. Let's juxtapose what this author's saying with what this author's saying, and they're both Black, right? Let's teach accurate history, right? There are Black people who've been thinking a certain way for a long time that you're not acknowledging, right? So that's the road we see towards connecting with parents and teachers and organizations like yours. But again, and I feel like I'm saying this for almost every question, we're not there yet. We've been around for almost 2 years, yes, but we've been focusing on the journal, the compendium, and connecting with different organizations. And I think in the near future we can have something more concrete to hand people like you and hopefully help.
All right, and we have a few more questions that came through here on chat. This one, and hopefully we have some time. We have 3 minutes remaining in our event here. This one is coming from Scott Perry. On the subject of having productive conversations with folks who don't agree with you, how much has FBT formally connected with Braver Angels and Monica Guzman and others?
Well, we've connected with Braver Angels in that we've spoken to Braver Angels, in context of symposia or conferences and things like that. I am part of the Braver Angels Lancaster County, which is in Central PA, where I am. So that's my contribution to what's going on. And I've also, spoken to the higher ups in the national setting. But I think Braver Angels is an ideal organization to bring up because I also believe in the power of local action, right? We can stop thinking about the federal or the state level. We can think about municipalities, right? Things that are literally in our backyard that we can do. And, Ann Applebaum wrote something about this about a year ago. What we need to do is start here, start small and with collaboration and go from there, right? And I believe that. I think we need to find what are called superordinate goals, which are goals that disparate groups can have in common, right? Goals that they cannot achieve on their own. They need to work with other people. There's a lot of that at the local level. And Braver Angels seems to get that, right? There are various groups all over the country, and they deal with their specific region. And I think that's wise. I think a bunch of people working small is easier than everybody trying to do something big. So that's my answer to that. We have been talking to other groups as well, but what we're trying to do now is create a network, right? We're trying to get out there and say, we are here together, right? Because 2 or 3 years ago, everybody on the Free Black Thought felt alone, right? They felt like they were working on this alone. No, that's not the case. There are other people, as we found out with each other, but there are other organizations as well. We need to solidify a network, right, of people who are against the illiberal nature of DEI and anti-racist education and activism and things like that. We need our own network, our fortified network, and I think that should be one of the primary goals in the near future.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. So this brings us to the conclusion of today's event. I want to welcome all to follow us on Twitter, connect with us through our website. We will have future events and you will be notified of them. We'll post it on our website as well as our Twitter. Thank you for your presence here today. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
And if we could stop recording.